Hello and welcome to Not Saving It for Later. I'm your host, Hannah Hembry Bell, where we guide women through divorce and beyond. Let's be honest. Most of us were taught to wait our turn, to tone it down, to save it for later. Later, when the kids are grown. Later, when the timing's right. Later, when you finally stop caring what they think. Well, I'm done waiting. I'm Hannah Hembry Bell, Texas divorce lawyer, mom, and woman who rebuilt her life from the wreckage. This is Not Saving It for Later, the podcast guiding women through divorce and beyond. The place where we stop whispering about what's hard and start talking about what's real. Marriage, divorce, money, motherhood, faith, sex, power, no filters, no fake empowerment, BS. Just straight talk and practical truth for women who are done pretending that everything's fine, because your next chapter isn't waiting on permission, and neither are we. I'm here today with my good friend, Holly J. Moore. You always use your middle initial, so I'm going to use it too. Holly J. Moore, it gives it an air of formality or something, who is a divorce family lawyer in California, who is as much fun as she is good in the courtroom, and that's really saying something. She is the queen of dressing in high fashion, like for me, over the top amazingness. Like it's going to have a Gucci something on it, or even, I don't know, sparkles, pink, lots of like black and shiny amazingness. Like she's this friend, anywhere you show up, you're gonna be like, okay, what are you wearing? So that I can like norm against that. Like, we're not really just probably wearing jeans and a t-shirt. Although I've seen some on our socials, like on the weekend with kids and stuff. Anyway, so that's just giving you a picture in case you're just listening to who I'm talking to. And Holly also is the host of a super successful podcast called Made for More. And I've been watching and following along from that. And it makes me giggle. She has the best giggle ever. And it makes me giggle every time I see it, and also learn so many things from her each time. And Holly, I don't know. How did I do? Is there a bunch of stuff I forgot of all of your cool things?
You did great, Hannah. Thank you so much for having me. And I love that you call it a giggle, because most people call it a cackle.
I guess I've got a cackle / giggle myself if I'm really laughing. So I feel that one.
Yeah. But yes, thank you so much for having me. Congratulations on this podcast. I love the concept, and you're an amazing host, so I'm so happy to be here.
Oh, awesome. Well, and whenever I was thinking about all the things that we could talk about, Holly, I mean, my brain was just like a million things, because Holly and I could sit here and just chat and catch up about anything. But, I think the thing that stood out to me most is, Holly, you represent a lot of high net worth, even celebrity divorces in California, and also work with a lot of men. And so like those two things, when I think about you as a divorce lawyer, stood out to me, and they're a lot different from my experience. I mean, we at Hembry Bell in Austin, we represent about equal men and women. This show is directed towards women, and my work in My Confident Divorce and The Circle is directed towards women. But that vantage point is a little different. And I've worked with some like higher, not fame, I guess, or whatever, but like well-known influencer sorts, but never any all the way to celebrities. In fact, I've had a couple consults like that, and I was like, I don't know, because I think for us as lawyers, there's a lot that goes with that. I know, Holly, I don't know if we want to talk about that part of what you've kind of experienced too. But let's just
talk about anything you want.
Okay. I was like, all right, because I think I just was thinking of that. But let's start with let's zoom out, because the people listening to the show are here because they are either thinking about, in the middle of, or going through divorce. And when I got divorced about 10 years ago, there weren't podcasts about it. Social media was still just like you had Facebook with people from college, pretty much, right? And trying to be a place that women can talk about what's happening. Because Holly, you're not divorced, right?
Correct. Never been divorced.
Okay, yeah, smart. Yes.
Knock on wood. Not yet.
not as of
not today.
Not today.
Right.
But in dealing with your practice and the different kinds of clients that you've represented. I know a lot of men, a lot of dads in high asset situations and sometimes celebrity situations. I thought you could be a great person to share with us sort of the difference that you see broadly across the board in the way that men, generally speaking, approach divorce and the way that women, generally speaking, approach divorce. Understanding, okay, disclaimer, everyone who's listening, every family law case is different. And it's also true that across a long period of time, there are these tropes, right? There are these certain kinds of people who show up in our offices over and over and over again. Like my husband is a narcissist, if you only knew him, gal. The guy who's like, I never loved her anyway. Pam at the office makes me feel like I've never felt before. Right. So we've got these different tropes. So, Holly, with all that kind of disclaimer up front, can you tell us a little bit about what these women listening can learn and like how they might emulate some of the stuff too that the guys do? Like, how do we approach this differently?
Yes, absolutely. So, I mean, it goes back to sort of the most basic core of men and of women. Men are just generally less emotional about things and generally approach things with more logic and pragmatism. And, going through a divorce generally is not much different. They're just able to better approach it with logic and look at the facts, look at the numbers, and sort of, they approach it with a sense of reason that us as women have a harder time with. We get more emotionally involved in it. But, it wasn't always this way, Hannah. I used to represent like mostly women. And I will tell you, at the beginning of my career, I didn't intend for that. But at the beginning of my career, obviously, like I'm a woman, I'm a female, and I had young kids. And so I must have just like attracted a lot of other young moms. And what frustrated me, and over time I ended up sort of evolving into representing more men, was the women always, even in divorce, after divorce, they're no longer a family unit. They're no longer, a couple. Like they just wanted to rely on the men so much for everything, for financial support, for all the various types of support. And it got frustrating to me over time because I'm like, you have so much potential. You're so amazing. You have these gifts. You have these talents. You have these skills. And you don't want to put them to use. You would rather sort of rely on the man for financial support. Like you would rather spend your time calling me, wondering where the support check is, rather than going out and like living up to your highest potential. And so I think, kind of circling back to your question of like, what can we learn? One of the biggest things is like men tend to be, statistically speaking, more the breadwinner of the family. But because of that, like they just know they have this responsibility to provide for themselves and for the family, and like ultimately for another family if they have a support obligation. And so I just feel like if women could just harness their potential more and their unique, skills, gifts, and talents to not have to rely on someone else, I feel so strongly that they would be happier. They would have a much higher sense of self-worth. They would gain a lot more confidence. And like that was and is my passion, but they wouldn't just listen to me as their attorney. So I had to go and represent the other side and sort of like force them into that situation where it's like, no, you have to use everything God gave you to be self-reliant. So that would be one of the biggest things that I would tell women is like, harness your power.
Yeah. And I think, you practice in California and I practice in Texas. And the way our states treat support is very, very different, right? Like in Texas, I think our experience would be different in this regard because, and depending where you're listening, dear listener, your state might be treating it very differently. So maybe you could give just a brief summary about that, Holly. But like in Texas, for instance, you can only get spousal maintenance, so like support beyond the marriage by law, if you've been married like 10 years or more and certain factors apply and you can't otherwise meet your minimum reasonable needs, then you can apply. Now, unless it's domestic violence or special needs and stuff like that. So there's this presumption against the spouse with the more money, supporting the other spouse for any kind of long term. And even once you can get it, it's for a limited duration of only a few years. Like, is that how it works in California, or it's
Yeah,
pretty
so
different than
if
that?
any of my clients are listening to this, they are going to pick up and move to Texas right away.
They should consider it.
Yes, because no, that's extremely different than in California. I think this is true, but like, don't quote me like true, but I'm pretty sure California, if you are an obligor, if you are a payer of support, California would be the absolute worst state you could possibly live in and get a divorce. Because in terms of what we call spousal support, other people call alimony, I think you call it spousal maintenance.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. All kind of referring to the same concept where one spouse has to give a check to the other spouse, may have to give a check to the other spouse on a monthly basis. So in California, if it's a short-term marriage, which is anything under 10 years, you're looking at basically probably having to do that if you earn more than the spouse for half the length of the marriage. So if you're married for 9 years, you're going to be doing that for 4.5 years. And the ratios are pretty high. Like, most people are like, how could this number be possible? I don't have, like, when I get my net check, there's nothing left, after I pay that. Like, the ratios are very high. If it's a marriage of over 10 years, we consider that a long-term marriage in California. And unless you agree to something else, you're going to walk out of court with an order that says you're paying that amount until death, remarriage, or further order of the court. So it feels like forever. And in many cases, it is forever. It's a long time.
Okay. So y'all, I think listening to this, it is so interesting to consider Holly's experience. Holly and I both see pretty similarly life, I think is fair enough to say. Like, pull yourself up by your bootstraps, go out there and get them, gal. Also being fair to all people. We both love men and love women, like, supportive and all of those things, like positive, upbeat people. Here, also, there's the amount of time, and then there's presumption against it. The time limit is limited, and there's a cap in the code, the family code. There's a cap on how much, like $5,000 a month.
Wow.
And it's only, it's based on a percentage and all this. So like, there's a limit on how long and a limit on how much. If you go to court, now you can agree outside of court for whatever you want. Pretty much in any state, they'll let you do that. Like, about the money part, you can agree to whatever. But so Holly's perspective, when we talk with her today, she's in a state where if you're married more than 10 years, you have to pay a certain amount of your money for the rest of your life. I could understand having a lot of opinions on whether or not that's fair. And yeah, I could see a temptation if you were the lesser moneyed spouse, if you're maybe in a celebrity situation and they make $1 gajillion and you've been doing the home and all of that, why would you necessarily go? I mean, why would you? I'm using quotes. I could see someone thinking, why would I go out there and get this job and whatever? They have been making all this money. They're going to have to pay me. I've been married for 11 years. I made it past the 10. They're going to have to keep paying me, and I can go get my nails done and go to Pilates instead. So is that kind of like where you came in, Holly, of wait, that's kind of not fair, and like fighting sort of against that, and also with the idea of that way women don't rely on that and go like push them from the nest? Is that the thinking?
So it's actually so much deeper for me than what is fair and what is not.
Okay, tell me.
Because, I mean, I've never actually lived like the Pilates, latte brunch life, if I'm being honest. But what I can tell you is, in my opinion, in my worldview, we get our confidence and we get our self-worth from doing things that are hard, and from doing things that are challenging, and from overcoming things, and from being of service to other people and to society and all of those things. And so, yes, on the surface level, maybe that's not super fair. I've got clients that are paying $80,000 a month, $150,000 a month, and their spouse can live that Pilates life, and maybe that's not fair on the surface. But for me, the deeper aspect of it is the person that, doesn't have to get up and do anything. They can go to Pilates. They can not go to Pilates. They can do whatever they want. They don't have to get up and do anything. And everything that they used to find purpose in, having their, having their kid, like being the primary caretaker of their kids all the time, when the marriage was intact because husband was working, or being the wife, taking care of the husband. All of those things now have also been taken away. So while it might think it sounds amazing to not have to take care of your kids 100% of the time anymore because they're spending, weekends or weeks at dad's house. And while it might sound nice to not have to take care of a husband anymore and deal with all of his junk, whatever, all the things that people say, while that might sound nice, you've now removed all of your sense of self-worth. And it's hard to get a new sense of confidence and self-worth from just like going to Pilates every day. So for me, it's more about, okay, what is your purpose separate and apart from your kids and your husband? Because that dynamic no longer exists. It's changed. It's different. It's not that you're not a mom anymore, but it is that you're not a wife anymore. And you've got to do something else to find that sense of self-worth and to give you confidence and to give you purpose. Otherwise, you turn into a very miserable person, even though you can go to Pilates every day and drink matcha teas.
Yeah. I mean, look, if you think about all of us just for a second, like back in the history of your entire life and the things that you're really proud of and the things that make you feel satisfied and like you were doing something that matters, more than likely, none of it was the most easiest thing ever. Right?
Absolutely.
Like
You're so
even
right. Yes.
both of us putting together a podcast, like you over in California, me over here, it's the best. And I love doing this. And it's not like I look at it and think, oh man, that was so easy. Right. So
Right.
if you look back and think, and so if I think I could see the temptation in California to be like, oh, let me get to easy street. But then you find out wherever you go, there you are. And we've talked a lot on the show about the identity shift that happens in divorce and how I think a lot of us in the marriage that's ending didn't do the work to heal our old patterns and to change our mindset. And so we hop into some new thing and we repeat that same cycle of behavior all over again. And so like if you haven't done the work in whatever was going on in your first marriage, and then all of a sudden you found yourself with $150,000 a month in spousal support in California, okay, so you don't even have money as a problem anymore. Now what? I mean, because a lot of us.
Let me just add in though, if you're
Yeah.
getting $150,000 a month in support, you're probably used to a lifestyle that costs you about $400,000 a month. So the people that are getting $150,000 a month are still complaining. So let's just be real about that. Yeah.
Fair. Well, I mean, and it's all about perspective, right? That's what I was going to say.
Yeah.
For people listening, a lot of them, like $150,000 might be more than they're making in a year.
Absolutely.
Or, they were making that last year or whatever. So it's all about perspective. Usually people spend however much money they got. But I think that your point is well taken about, however much money's coming in from support. And however, it's the same lesson we've been talking about this whole time that, ladies, if we don't take the time to face ourselves in the mirror and get real about what's happening there, 150,000, 1.5 million a month, whatever the number is that you're going to be getting, you're going to still be sitting with yourself after this and like asking those same questions, not feeling happy. If you're ever looking to someone else, this husband, to satisfy you, to make you happy, whatever, when all of that's gone and then you don't have your kids for half the time or so, and all of these other people, you don't have the status of being his wife anymore and all of that out there, what are you going to be left with? And I think that people often, and I think women too, think that getting divorced will create a lot of problems, but it'll at least solve a few, right? When the people in the aftermath who've gone through this, the ones who are thoughtful will tell you, oh yeah, that's when the real work started of rebuilding my identity. Because I talk about, Holly, the quote, right, that the amount which we can grow is directly proportional to the amount of truth we can accept about ourselves without running away. Like that's the paraphrase, Viktor Frankl quote. And I think that what I'm hearing you say is that's the lesson, right? Like, can you face the truth of who you are and the choices that you've made. And maybe you haven't done the things to get the career. You haven't advance that part of yourself and purpose outside of your home, so that when that card from the house of cards is pulled, of your wife card, and your mom, all the time mom card is pulled, is your house going to collapse? That's like what you're saying. Judge Judy, have you seen that clip before on social media of Judge Judy talking about how, finances give you options and give you decisions, and a woman needs to have some money in the bank? Have you seen that
Yeah.
one?
Yep.
Yeah. And I think that women, and I understand where it comes from, right? Like, not even that long ago, we couldn't get a mortgage without some
Yes.
man signing off. So it's historical. I think it's lineage stuff. I think it's generational. But we live in a different era now. And we have more, with more information comes more responsibility. And speaking of, because that's what was making me think, is this exact part what made you decide to start the podcast and start talking to both the men and women about the purpose? Is that where that came from?
A little bit. I mean, it was sort of multidimensional. As I started sort of connecting with really interesting people on Instagram, I was like, I'm learning so much from so many different people. And I'm like so blessed by just like random DM conversations, and their content is really interesting. And, gosh, like, this is really like blessing me so much. If only like other people could have this opportunity as well. And so that kind of like, that was what the idea of having a podcast was born out of. Mm-hmm. But then it's like, okay, what is the theme going to be? And then just thinking about sort of the purpose of my life and my work as a lawyer. And it is like, yes, we are all made for more. Like, we all have unique skills, gifts, and talents that we've only barely like reached the surface on. I mean, most of us, it's like we have so much potential that we don't even know about. We're just barely scratching the surface. And I think the other thing too is I just want to make it so clear, obviously I'm using like the most extreme examples of support payments per month. Everybody's not getting $150,000 a month. A lot of people are getting $2,000, $5,000, $500, but also in thinking about this, like, maybe one or two, but most of those women are not in that situation out of malice for the husband. They're not, maybe they get a little bit of delight about how painful it is for the husband to write that check every month, but I don't believe it's evilness or malice or anything like that. I believe it's fear. And
well, that's what I was going to say.
Yes.
I feel that it's because they're afraid. Like, if I'm not this, what am I? Like, what do you have to say to them, Holly, if someone's listening and is like, I mean, yeah, you're kind of right, but if I don't have his help, how am I going to pay my bills? What am I going to do?
Right.
Do I have anything to offer? I've been raising fucking kids for these years,
Yes. And so to them, I would say, like, it's never too late to start something. I actually did, I had a woman on my podcast, I think, like, she wrote a book and it's called Boss Mom. And it's a fascinating, because Hannah, you and I are both really lucky in the fact that, like, even if we decided not to work, we both have a professional degree that is marketable as lawyers. But, a lot of people don't have that. And a lot of people don't have, work experience or educational background or any sort of degrees to be like, okay, well, now I need to go to work. Here's my law degree. I can go and I can make this happen. Like, a lot of people don't have that. But what sort of came to light with that podcast episode that I did is she was like, anyone can have a business nowadays. Like, we are living in a time where literally every single person can own a business without capital, without a law degree, without a college degree. You know what I mean? Like, we're living in a time where it's relatively speaking, it's easier to make money now than ever. And she talked about like Etsy businesses and social media businesses and all of those types of things that you don't have to have education. You don't really have to have capital to even start. You don't have to have this massive team like in your spare bedroom or at your kitchen table. Like, you can do something. And I think it's just really like being resourceful and believing in yourself also that you can do something. That's where it starts.
Now, okay. I mean, and I agree. I think it's also just us women taking full personal responsibility for our lives. Like the good news and the bad news. The best news and the worst news ever is that your life's all on you. I mean, it's both the best and worst news. And I
Yes.
think a
It's
lot of people.
terrifying and liberating.
Yes. Holly and I have learned this lesson alongside each other for years now. And like the issue there is a lot of people don't fully understand and like own that. And so divorce is one way, y'all, where it can push you into the middle of making that decision, making that call, and understanding that life really is on you. And it's not going to just happen for you. You're not going to have this man just doing it for you anymore. I always say divorce can make you bitter or better, and you get to choose. And like the better part is when you make those decisions and use this as a springboard to create the next part of your life fresh from scratch. It can be such an amazing thing, but it's just because it's amazing doesn't mean that it's not scary.
And incredibly difficult. I mean, that is something that I talk about in my podcast a lot, but also in my law firm is like, I have not been divorced. My parents are still married. Like everybody in my inner circle, like divorce is not really a part of my life, but I have experienced death of people that were closest to me. And so from that, I feel like I can relate to this massive loss. Like you had this whole plan for your life. You thought you were growing old together. You had you're like, okay, this, that, and this is going to happen. And, the rug is pulled out from underneath you. And you have to figure out how to navigate that. And very much like you say, Hannah, like it can make you bitter or better. I mean, it's a fork in the road, and it can cause you to completely, the phrase I use a lot is like circle the drain. You're just like in a downward spiral and you're circling the drain, and it can ruin you. Or you can make the choice to use all this pain and suffering and incredibly difficult things to overcome. You can use it to do something extraordinary.
Well, and okay, so for the women who are like, all right, y'all, I'm in. Yes, okay, I need to get my shit together. I need to be able to support myself and all of that. Can you think of ways you've seen in your practice that men and women prepare for divorce differently, and like some nuggets the women can learn from them on the gear up and get ready phase? Like if they think they're going to get divorced in 3 or 6 months from now, do you see any difference in the way people show up at your office if they've done any prep work? Or maybe you see it the same, that neither one of them get ready.
So I would actually say women prepare far more.
Okay, tell us. Okay, good news.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I mean, I think statistically speaking, like women will think about a divorce for 3 to 5 years before doing it. And like statistically speaking, men think about it between 3 and 6 months. And in my experience in my firm, like I have found that to be that dynamic to be true, where women are preparing far more. And, it could be because they feel like they don't have as much access to resources. And so they're either like squirreling away money during that time, or, trying to figure out like what is my life going to look like if I do pull the trigger and, decide to dissolve this marriage. So I do think actually, I mean, it shouldn't be a competition, but if we're looking at it as a competition, women would win on the preparation front. I think women, yeah, they're more thoughtful about what is my life actually going to look like if and when I decide to do this.
Well, and 70% of divorces are filed by women.
Yes.
So we know they've at least thought about it sooner because they get to our offices, generally speaking, sooner. Okay, so I guess we're going to do ding, the women have the prep
Yes.
version, and I see,
Wait
that
for
even
women.
that being I love it. But the prep part, a lot, I mean, I still see a lot of women who come in and they spend all their energy deciding to do it and don't have their documents together and financials and, all of that. So
Yeah.
I think, most of them could probably do both. During the marriage, I think you said that the big thing to learn is about, trying to keep the emotions reined in and approaching the process with logic and reason. And here are the numbers, and it is what it is. As far as during the marriage, can you also talk about like sort of the emotional set point and behaviors that you find, as sort of a warning to people thinking about doing this, for women going in? Like, hey, whatever you do, don't do this because it's probably not going to go good in your divorce. Like becoming obsessed with revenge, obviously, would be one of them. Can you think of things like that
Yes.
you've seen?
Yes. I mean, I think it's so much easier said than done. I mean, yes, it's easy for me to give lip service and say, well, men are so much more, factual and logical and pragmatic, and that is how you should all be, women. Like, that's really hard. That's really, like, I never want to minimize the fact that, like, this is incredibly emotionally traumatizing. And it's the most, if not one of the most, if not the most difficult things I would imagine a person would go through, because you have to grieve the loss of the marriage. Even if you wanted the divorce, there's still like this grieving that has to happen. And so I don't want to minimize the fact that it's incredibly emotional, and emotions are valid and feelings are valid. But I think sometimes, like, when you let the emotions run the show, that's where you get into trouble. I very often tell my clients, like, you're sending my kid to college right now, right? Like, how about we think about it, like, let's send your kids to college, not my kids to college. Like, you're paying me so much for these issues that maybe, if you looked at it on a cost-benefit analysis, like, what are we doing here? And I have that conversation with men and women alike. I think men tend to understand that a little bit more because they're not so tied up in the emotion of it or in the revenge of it or the spite. And I think women need to, again, I know it's not easy, and it's much easier for me to sit here in the seat that I'm in and say it, but like, the best revenge is not getting revenge at all. Like, the best revenge is moving on and living an amazing life after, and taking this opportunity to redesign your life in the way that you want. And with all the experience and wisdom you have behind you now, we have to let go of like this desire for spite and revenge and all those things. And I can't remember your question, Hannah. Did I even answer your question?
No, that's it. Just like the things that, like, hey, women, and being emotional, can you think of like trying to give them some warnings of this does not play out well? Like, can you think of specific things like don't send that you see people do repeatedly? Like, don't send hateful text messages. Don't talk ugly to your kids about their new girlfriend. Or like, can you think of some things that you see women do that's against their own interests because they're acting from an activated place?
Don't use the kids as pawns. I mean, when you're mad at dad, like, don't say he can't see the kids because you're mad at him for some unrelated reason. I mean, and this is so this is what I see most is people using the kids in all of this emotional turmoil. But I think a lot of times in the mom's mind, and I'm saying moms because I see this occur more often with women and moms than I do with dads. It does happen with males as well, but I see it more often in women, which is why I'm such a proponent of getting your own thing going on, your own career, your own purpose, and all this kind of stuff. Because when your purpose right now, which let's just say is your kids, is threatened because now that's not your full-time job anymore, in your mind, you kind of have to like make it continue to be your full-time job because you got to hold on to your purpose. Like, it's a survival instinct. And so because of that, you will do things like say that the kids are not safe with dad and say that dad is doing X, Y, and Z, and that's really bad for the kids. And you will make things like, what is he packing in their lunch? Or did the kid go to school with a jacket or without a jacket? You will make those things be so big in your mind. And then you will call your lawyer and you will tell them, these are horrible things. This person is not fit to parent. Let's go to court on this. And again, I don't think it's out of malicious intent. I really think those are big things in your mind at the time because of the dynamics of the situation. So what kind of things could women look out for? I would say, like, if you're feeling reluctant to let the kids be with dad, you know, as much as he wants them to be, like, why? Where is that coming from? Is it truly a safety risk for the kids to be with the person that you chose to have them with, you know, and that you were married to? Like, is that truly a safety risk? Maybe it is. It could be. I'm not discounting that. But I'd say 90% of the time, it's not as much of a safety risk as you might think. It's more of a, I gotta hold. I'm in survival mode here. I gotta hold on to my purpose and my identity as a mom and make sure I can keep the kids with me as much as possible.
Before we go any further, let me ask you something. What if you didn't have to Google your way through divorce at 2 a.m.? What if you actually had a place with real women to talk to, real answers in real time? That's The Circle. It's where I go live every single week, unpack the hard stuff, and help you stop spinning. Go to myconfidentdivorce.com/circle because confusion costs more than clarity ever will. I cannot wait to see you in there. A tool I recommend for every client that I work with and every woman that I would meet on the street is called Our Family Wizard. And y'all, this app, this website changed my life. I cannot overstate its impact because we all know that the hardest part, once you're done with the whole divorce thing and you've got your papers, it isn't the decree, it isn't the calendaring, it's the communication. Because if you're in a situation like I'm in, you will get messages from everywhere. Text message, Snapchat, Instagram, Facebook. Now, I mean, it's even worse with all the social media, phone calls, direct messages. It goes on and on. But what Our Family Wizard does is brings that all into one place. So you have one place to check for messages, one place to be interrupted from your daily life to deal with the whole co-parenting situation. And like, in addition to the messaging, it does amazing things like tracks expenses in real time so you don't have to argue about who did what with what receipt. It does calendar entries so you're not like, oh wait, sorry, I never got that invite, and you have that whole BS where you're not sure what to do. You can check in real time if you're ever worried about a future enforcement of the provisions in your decree or your judgment. This app changes lives, and they've got special promotions and deals for listeners of the show. You can get access to those at ourfamilywizard.com/HHB. Yeah. And I think it's so interesting, just our practice and what we see. You know, a lot of that I see on the flip side, you know, with dads, with the kids as a pawn, or like, I don't want to, or they'll say they want equal time with the kids and it's really about child support. I mean, there's a lot of great dads who mean that, right?
Yes.
It goes both ways. But I think, y'all, what we can learn is what I summarize as saying, keep the main thing the main thing. If you're emailing your lawyer about what the kids ate for lunch, what he packed for the kids in their lunch, then you are not keeping the main thing the main thing. No judge is going to care whether they had celery sticks or not. And if you're emailing lawyers back and forth about, one time there was like a cheerleading uniform, I remember, and it was like, y'all, you've already paid for this cheerleading uniform 3 times over at this point. So keeping the main thing the main thing. And then the way I talk about it in the My Confident Divorce course is like, develop your one question. The one question by which you can make every decision in your divorce. And that question is essentially, will this action get me closer to or farther away from the life I've envisioned for myself after divorce? Will sending this message about whether or not the child had celery in their lunch get me closer to this life that's joyous and positive and happy and I've moved on, or farther away? And then if it's farther away, then let's not do that thing, right? And having that, and one way I think they can do that. So it's like, okay, here's all the things not to do, but then they're like, Hannah, Holly, you two H gals, like that's real hard. Like, what do I do? I mean, I think the best, most distilled way I can explain it, because I am divorced and been through a whole thing and been dealing with this for a decade, and is to send no messages and do nothing when you're activated. And I've learned that word in recent years. Like it's like both super positive, super negative in any way. Really, it feels great to feel good. But what I've sort of learned is like what goes up must come down. There's like this yin and yang to the whole thing. So in some ways, what I'm really trying to achieve is a neutral state where I am content with my being and who I am and not looking for something else to give me dopamine or bring me up, or obviously to stay away from things that bring me down. So like, can you put a boundary on yourself of at least 24 hours before you send any non-emergency messages. Can you give yourself a business day before you respond or send that message? Put it in your drafts. Hopefully you're using Our Family Wizard, which is like our preferred, most loved
Yeah.
app, right? So if you're using Our Family Wizard, you're going to put it in the drafts and wait and say nothing in activation. And I think if you just did that one thing, you would save yourself so much heartache and money and fight and resources in every sense of the word, psychological, emotional, financial, like everything else. So maybe that's a way, Holly, too, of just like the practical tool for actually managing those emotions. I think, yes, getting your purpose, getting something outside of yourself to do, but then also within yourself, rooting down in your own independent identity, right? And then putting in a safeguard of never acting or speaking in activation. Like if people just did those few things, I think they would go a long way in minimizing conflict, money, and everything else.
I totally agree. And I mean, that's, yes, you have given a very practical solution to the more sort of, fluffy concept of like, let's not let emotions rule the day here. So yes, I agree. Like yes, activated is a great word. And
Well,
when
because
you're
people say
feeling
it to
that,
me, they'll say like, my whole life, like after divorce, you need to go heal. But then I would be like, but really, how do I do that? And like, okay, don't be
right,
emotional, but I am.
right.
So
Yes,
it
yes.
can feel insulting. Like it can say, don't be emotional. And I think that like, we're not
Right.
actually saying don't be emotional. We're saying take no action when you're in the heat of emotion. Like I think of emotions as your body's truth and your body's trying to communicate with you. And if you dig underneath the emotion is some sort of truth that your body is telling you that you can use and learn from. So
Yeah.
I think being emotional is maybe not something we'd advise against. Like, be emotional, like, understand, do the work with your
Feel
therapist.
the feelings.
Yeah, feel it. Just don't act in it because you're going to cut your nose to spite your face.
You're so right. Yes, absolutely. Yeah.
Okay, now, Holly, what
Yeah.
about in the post divorce universe? Do you have any things that the women listening, the women of divorce land, that we can learn of the way that you've seen men move on to bigger, better, happier worlds or whatever that we could learn from that we could emulate?
I think men are just better at moving on. And I think, I've often wondered because I don't know, Hannah, I'm interested in your experience, but in my experience, like women oftentimes want the house. They want the house so bad. And so we do a lot of things to help them keep the house. And so more times than not, like the man is displaced from the house. And I often wonder if that sort of action of like being displaced from sort of the center of the family unit, like the physical center, I wonder, does that help him move on? Because he already had to get a new place. He had to get new decor. He had to literally build a new life. And I don't know, in your experience, do women mostly want to keep the family home?
Well, yeah, and I have a thought on that. And I think you're right. So I think generally speaking, yes, because generally speaking, the mom is asking for primary care of the children and like the way that works in Texas, right? And generally speaking, the house and the kids are going to kind of stay together. The courts in Texas, at least, and I think courts generally want the least amount of disruption to the
Yes.
children that's possible. Like, hey, you two yahoos couldn't work it out and you drug these kids into the middle of this. There's some sort of indirect, loose, colloquial tie between the house and keeping the kids. So I think that's a lot of where it comes from. But I have the experience of I moved out of my marital home and I didn't have my kids primarily. Okay. So when I first got divorced, however, to your point of leaving the thing and accessing, I think what you're saying is all new energy. I didn't realize how important that was. So it's my belief that things retain energy. And I know, Holly, you
Right.
agree with that, right? And so, like,
Yeah.
and also if you've been married, one of these long term marriages, like you mentioned, 10 or more years, pretty much everything you're going to look at around your house probably has some sort of a memory. Maybe not that lamp, but like, oh, there's that picture. Oh, there's that statue. Like, that piece of art. I remember when we got it, whatever. And if you're still surrounded with all of that same stuff, I think in a lot of ways it can anchor you. So like when I moved, I took almost no things with me. I mean, some stuff I'd had from my parents. So that was like my parents' stuff. So it didn't seem anyway, and went to Ashley Furniture and got out a credit line, and just bought all new stuff for my house. And the kids had that for a long time. And there was this one piece of furniture that I brought with me, and it's like it haunted me. It's like that one thing so drained my energy, and I wondered about how it would have been if I would have had all the same stuff. And so like, look, if it's within in your life options, if you can make it an option, or as soon as you can make it an option, I think there's really something to breaking up with all the shit, all the stuff to get away from all of it, as a way to help you move on. I think that's one of the ways I was able to move on. Now, I was the one who filed the marriage. I'd processed it my way through and made that decision. And I'm such a decisive person. Like once I've made a decision, that's that. So like
Yeah.
I have it easier in that way. I'm not wishy-washy in that
Right.
sense. So I'd made up my mind, but then also I didn't bring all of the stuff with me. Even this is so silly, but I had it that the house where we lived in as a family, we built in this closet, and I had this huge drawer, like a really big drawer full of bras and underwear. Okay. It was just like this. I'd be like you can envision me like, "Grrr," like digging in that drawer. Okay. To find stuff. It was so deep, like, I don't know, 1.5 feet, 2 feet deep. And that's where all my stuff was. I somehow in moving out missed that drawer, like all together. I don't know, just taking out like other personal effects and things when it was terrible. I didn't do it the best, to be honest. If I could go back, I would do that very differently. But I also left behind that whole drawer. And I know that's kind of silly, but like I didn't even bring my panties and my bras with me. Okay. So I don't know. I
That's
think
very interesting.
I know there's more to that, I'm
I
sure.
was gonna say that should be studied. I think
Yeah,
there's
it should be
something
said. We'll
there.
talk to Freud about it.
Yeah.
But so I think that that's a good point. I think that also, I think people could say a lot of different reasons why you think maybe men move on easier. I don't know that I see it one way or the other more this than that. I think it comes down to whether either person. I don't really. Okay, let me say this. I don't see men 2 and 3 years later still crying necessarily about the divorce. There's some like Facebook warrior dads who are like still bitter about how court screwed them over. Okay, so there's those dudes.
Yes.
Accepting those people,
Yes.
I don't meet people in just my experience as a person living in Austin where the guy will tell you about his divorce, go on and on when you kind of first meet him, the way some women will, and you think the divorce was yesterday and it was 5 years ago. So like I don't see that as much. I think that if the woman didn't file, I think that loss of control for her and that fear that it brings in, and it augments the challenge of letting go and choosing the better path instead of the bitter. I think it would be harder if someone was wanting to leave you that you otherwise thought was going fine and you were shocked, and then
Yeah.
you didn't have it may take them equally as long to process the divorce as they
Yeah.
would have been if they would have been the one to file the 3 to 5 years to decide to move on. So I think maybe they're going to take 3 to 5 years one way or the other, either before the divorce is happening
Right. Yes, that's true.
or afterwards. I bet that's what it is. Okay. I bet some psychologist can just thank us.
We uncovered something.
We did. I bet
Yes.
it's that there is some appreciable period of time a woman needs versus a man needs to move on. And the women process it before they leave. 70% of us are the ones filing. And I think if she's not the one to file, she's going to do it after.
After. Yeah.
But maybe one of the ways to do it is to get rid of all your stuff.
Maybe that. And also, statistically speaking, like a man's, I think they say that a man's standard of living goes up after divorce and a woman's goes down.
That makes me
think,
want to throw up and throw things, by the way.
I know, but you know what I honestly think it is I actually think it's the breadwinner of the family. Their standard of living goes up. I don't think it's gender specific, but because statistically speaking, most, more men are breadwinners than women. I think that's what it is. And so I'm also wondering if in the moving on conversation, it's easier to move on when you feel like I can support myself. I've got this, like I'm okay, versus constantly having to rely on that ex person to, for your support, for your financial support. I wonder if that plays into it too.
I'm sure, right? I mean, that, and just look, they say you got a million problems, but if you got a health problem, you got one problem. I would say you got a million problems, but if you got a money problem, health would trump, but then money next, right? It was not long ago where I was not money comfortable, right? Where it was not like, if I was worried about money, I remember, early being married, like counting the $25 rebate I was going to get from Lowe's from buying paint, And so like,
Right.
if you're in that level of worry, and like women post-divorce, I think a lot of times are trying to make it all work on income when that's not, and it's a function of the system their family set up. She was raising the kids. She was having the kids. She put her career on the back seat, and that was their deal. And then now the benefits of that deal are walking out the door, and she's left to have to pick up the pieces. That sucks. And that's the thing, y'all. It does suck. Like Holly and I would not say that doesn't suck.
Right.
And you can either sit around and stare at the thing that sucks and decide to get really mad and really bitter about it, or do something differently, right? Because as Holly would say, you were made for more. So
that's right. Yeah.
Okay. Now, Holly, another thing that I think is so juicy and interesting about your practice and we, us
oh my
lawyers,
God, I can't wait to hear this.
I know.
Juicy and interesting. Let's go.
Yeah, I know. But that you have actual celebrities as clients, right? And obviously Holly cannot tell us and wouldn't who those people are. But if you were going to say, like, from working with celebrities and doing their divorces and these kinds of deals that they make, what is something that, those of us who only ever hear about celebrity divorces on like clips from E! News on Facebook or Instagram or TikTok or whatever, what is something that we may not know about celebrity Hollywood sorts getting divorced that might surprise us?
A couple things. One is, if it's two celebrities together, which most often in the celebrity world it is. In the professional athlete world, it's not always that way.
Right.
So I'll talk about that in a second. But if it's two celebrities together, they both have a vested interest in keeping it very quiet and managing the press on it. So what you might not know is that it's going on for a very long time before the world ever knows about it.
Right.
And so a lot of times you'll see, I'm trying to think of something recent that
that like Nicole Kidman and Keith Urban, like we heard about the divorce, and it's already all done and everything's a deal. It's like they did not make that deal yesterday, y'all.
Exactly. Yeah. That's what I was trying to think of recent examples that I wasn't involved in so I could talk about. But J-Lo and Ben Affleck, same thing. Like we heard they filed, and then it was like a month later they have a whole divorce agreement buttoned up, sealed, signed, delivered, everything. That stuff is going on for a very long time before that. And there's a lot of strategy around not actually, because normally like you file the paperwork, you file the petition first, and then you work through your way, you work your way through the divorce, and it takes a couple years. What people might not know is TMZ combs those filings in the courthouse and has alerts set up. So if you file something, TMZ knows about it within 10 minutes. So anyway, there's a lot of strategy around what are you actually going to file with the court. But I think, that's all fun and games and salacious and gossipy and whatever else. But I think what most people maybe, if you think about it, you'll realize it, but we don't really think about it. It's like the celebrities and, the famous people and the athletes and all that, like they're worried about all the same stuff that the rest of us are. They're scared. They don't know what's going to happen. They're worried about finances. They're worried about, what are they going to have to pay or how much are they receiving? Like all of those things, that the rest of the world is also worrying about in a divorce, like they're worried about that too. And sometimes I think, we look at them from afar and think, well, they never have a financial worry. They're so rich. They never have this, that, or the other, but they do. They worry about those things, and they're just people too.
Well, I think we're seeing this with the Kim Kardashian and Kanye thing, and how she's put out this show, right? Or document. I don't even know. I've seen clips from it online where she's talking about, and you can see her talking about, like, that's the perspective of a woman who is gone through it. Like,
yes,
I feel you,
sister.
said that.
Yeah, I just saw the first thing this morning. I haven't really been following that, and I was like, oh my gosh. Like,
well, and she's talking about just the experience of this, and like how he was talking essentially ugly about my mom, and she's always loved him and cared for him. And like, I think it's something we're hearing a lot more about from them, because I always kind of think of celebrities as regular folks. I mean, it's not like I wouldn't feel like, oh my gosh, there's like Kim Kardashian if she was sitting here, but like also you're just Kim, like you're a person. And they're going through this. Now they have the added pressure of the whole world caring. Like, you may think the whole world cares about your divorce in like Duluth. Is it Iowa? Minnesota? I don't know where even
Minnesota.
Whatever. You know what I mean? Des Moines, Iowa. They probably don't. The whole world probably doesn't care. Your whole town may not even care, right? Certainly if you live like in Austin or Dallas, like whatever. But these people do have the added pressure of the whole entire world caring about their divorce. Think about the worst of your moments in your life if they were fodder for TMZ people to find. And then you have actual real life children who then can go watch it and follow it, and their friends at school and whatever are going to say this to them. I think that, like, not only are they normal people, they're normal people turned up by a million. And just because people have money or fame does not take away their personhood, in my opinion.
Right.
And I think a lot of people treat celebrities like that, and that like somehow the world is entitled to that information about them, which I just don't agree with that. But that's interesting. Yeah, just a reminder that they're just people too. Now, you were saying something about it's different when there's athletes.
Yes. Okay. So what I was going to say is, when you have two people who are in the public eye, they both have a vested interest of keeping it very quiet and kind of like keeping it classy. When you have a case which has happened, which I've been involved in multiple of them, where you have, for some reason, this just happens to be the case more so with professional athletes, is they end up fathering children with people who are not in the public eye. And those situations are the hardest, because you have one person who has an extremely vested interest in reputation management, and you have another person who does not care and wants the press and wants it to be nasty.
Yeah, sounds like leverage to me.
Yeah. Well, yes. I mean, depending on which side you're on, yes. But those cases are hard, because one person wants to keep it quiet, the other person does not, and wants their 15 minutes. And, it's very easy to drum up a lot of press on those types of things. And if you represent the person that doesn't want the press, it's hard. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, because, right. And I think we can learn some things that us mere mortals from that is, maybe it's not a professional athlete, but maybe in your town, they're on a city council or something, or maybe their business is relationship driven. They sell insurance. And if like all of a sudden all their shit was laid bare, that might not be the most convenient for them. And I'm not saying that's the best way to go, but it is a motivator for people to keep things quiet and able to come to the deal and make some terms. And I think sometimes people can take that to the extreme, right? If you don't give me everything I want that's kind of crazy, then I'm going to tell everybody about that's not obviously the way to divorce a co-parent, but that's what I'm talking about.
So here's where I see that women, oftentimes their emotions run the day to their own detriment. Talking earlier about like what triggers could we really educate women on? This is a big one, because if women were operating in their practical mind and in their okay, let's just take the emotion out of it. Let's think about what is actually best for me in the long run. They would allow these situations to remain quiet. Whether it's the local city council guy, or whether it's the insurance broker, or whether it's the professional athlete, or whatever the case may be, they would not want to tarnish, particularly in California, they would not want to tarnish this person's professional reputation, because
It's gonna
as
affect
the
their
woman,
money.
you want them to go on making money, right? That is what a rational, reasonable person would do.
See, in Texas, we don't have that same motivation.
Okay, so in California, that would be the rational, reasonable motivation is, I will keep this quiet. I will not allege false domestic violence and have this person completely ruined, because I want them to go on and make money and pay me support. But this is where sometimes emotions run the day and ruin the day, because they're like, I'm feeling so hurt and so vengeful. I want this person to be ruined, even if it means they will no longer be able to go on in their career, their reputation will be damaged, and they will make less money or no money, which means I will get less money. Like, sometimes they don't think about that.
Well, and not to mention that's still 50% of your kid's DNA.
Yes.
You know, when you're mean to their other parent,
Right.
you're being mean about them derivatively in their own little hearts.
Totally.
You know, and keeping that, but like, you know, it's hard to keep all of that in line at one time when you're feel like, you know, the earth is quicksand underneath you. Now, Holly, in those kinds of cases, I think, right, and in some of yours, I think you've gotten yourself into some sticky kind of situations, one that kind of went on for a while. Would you be willing to share just a little bit about, I mean, I think it's just a curious and interesting thing. Like, for divorce lawyers, people just make us the butt of jokes and all this thing. But like, most divorce lawyers that I know are really kind of like the best sort of people and have the heart for this. Like, we don't have to do this kind of law. We could have done like contract law or, you know, land or real estate or whatever. But we're in here in the front lines of life, you know, trying to wave our swords and help people.
Wow.
And could you tell us a little bit about what that's, you know, brought up for you in real life?
Yeah. So, I mean, I don't know which sticky situation.
I'm thinking of like the have to get security situations you've been in.
Okay. Yeah. So, I mean, I didn't know how dangerous of a job this was, but, yeah, I mean, you know, I've been involved in a couple dangerous cases. Some of those cases have been because the clients are involved in something dangerous, you know, cartel affiliations, things like that. Other cases have been where, you know, you're working on a case for a while and the client starts to sort of blur the lines in their mind of the role that you play in their life. And, you know, unfortunately, like, there are clients, opposing parties that are battling mental illness. So there's been a couple times in my career where the cases have gotten dangerous for any of the above mentioned factors. And I've had to get a bodyguard. I've had security, you know, you have to sort of take precautions against those types of things.
Yeah, I've never been to that. I mean, I think that, you know, we've all heard stories of divorce lawyers getting in those situations, and they're just horrible. I don't even want to think about it for much longer. You know, because we're in the middle, we're in the center of people deciding what's going to happen for everything they care about in this entire world.
Right.
And, you know, bringing up all their fears, all their insecurities. Like, we are in deep. I'm grateful to get to do it, and I'm grateful to do a job that matters. It feels like it matters, you know, and you can really
most
have
days,
yeah, most days. Some days it's like whatever.
Days I'm like, this is all meaningless.
But on the whole, you know, we joke that if you're not like, you know, fuck this at least once a week in family law because you're like completely at your wit's end, then you're not doing it right. You're not as in it. But you know, y'all, it's just there's so much at stake, and nobody is judging women or men or whoever for the way they're handling it. These are just some things that we can learn from a big fancy California lawyer who deals with, you know, fancy folks and some of the ways that they do it, and in a totally different scheme. And one thing I'm taking away is too, Holly, how much where we've practiced has affected both of our outlooks. Because if I was in a state where it was unlimited alimony after, or spousal or whatever, after a certain amount of marriage, I mean, the advice would be, look, you better be real sure you're going to stick after 10, or you better get out before the 10, you know, so it just shapes the way we think about it. So, okay, now, Holly, we ask these same questions of everybody who comes on the show. The name of the show is Not Saving It for Later. And we found this to be a pretty evocative statement. Like it usually brings up something in people. So, does it bring up anything for you? Is there anything you find yourself saving for later?
So yes, all the time. And I love that you've like, taken this thing and like have done what you've done with it. And what it brings up for me is like it's a matter of discipline. I have to talk myself into not saving something for later. You have to have this like little internal dialogue, like in the morning, like, am I going to squirt that perfume or this perfume? It's like, well, I'm going to do this one because that's the special one. It's like, no, squirt the special one, like but you have to like have this little internal dialogue. And I kind of love that you're like bringing it to our consciousness. But yeah, the thing that it kind of brings up for me is like, no, you have to be disciplined to not save it for later.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's interesting because in the different people we've talked with this season, several of them are like, yeah, I don't save anything for later. Like it's all now. I do, it's so interesting. And there is something to study there about like the root in us that makes us like I say, I've talked before a bunch of times about like which spoon I'm going to use in the morning and they're literally reusable and you literally put them in the dishwasher. Um,
Right.
it's the dumbest thing, but the first step is awareness, right? Bringing it
Okay,
forward.
what have you observed about the people that are like, I don't save anything for later? Like, how did they get that way?
I think they're really conscious and aware and like connected to experiencing pleasure and joy and depth of feeling now. Like and the only presence and pleasure go together. You can't experience pleasure in any other way except in the now. That's actually how we experience all of life, right? Is in the now. Right now. Now is all there actually is. Later is a lie. And yesterday it's gone, right? So all you ever experience life in is in the now. And people who truly like root in and through their presence allow pleasure and allow good things and in the now and don't necessarily spend all their time strategizing and guarding against everything that could come and threaten them, right? And they're content to just be. The people who can just be all of everything is now. They're not going to save it for later. They have this knowledge, like I'll be present then too, and I'll have what I need then. And so they're not stocking up for some future like apocalypse.
Right.
I know. I know. There's a lot. And I
That's
think
more like that.
it's catching. I think people like that can remind you and being around them more of just like, hey, just a minute. Like Lily Shepherd has been a guest on the show, and she is one who said, I don't save anything for later. And I remember her being at a brunch with her, and we were going, da, 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 everybody was da 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 about law firms and businesses and blah, 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 blah. And she just was sitting there kind of like unbothered and like, but where are you in this? Like that question, God, just pierced my heart. And I think as women, so often we write ourselves out of our own lives. Um, because that brings me actually to the dominant thought. And this is what my dominant thought was for the week. So I have this theory that like we have one main thought our brain is chewing on. I mean, we have a lot of thoughts in a day, but like that one kind of through line that's on your mind until you sort of either solve it or it gets replaced by something else. And mine has been I'll go first because it's relevant to what I was saying,
Yeah.
is about how I'm going to do all the things anyway, so I might as well enjoy it. And like this week in particular, I have so many things. Like if I just put a list of all the things and set them in a row, I know you would understand, but a lot of people would be like, what? Like that sounds like a month or a year's worth of stuff in a week. And I'm like, I know I do this to myself. And I found myself this week looking at that week ahead of me with some anxiety, some fear, some nerves, like pre-living everything in advance to like what all could go wrong. And like, look, some of it I need to plan because I need to do things on day A that's going to affect day A plus
Yeah.
6 to figure out, right? So, but then I was, on Sunday night before it was Monday when I had a really big day, I was thinking, I'm going to do that day anyway. I'm going to do it. So I have a choice to make. Am I going to have a good attitude or not? Am I going to enjoy it or not? worrying, like going in it in this like grin and bear it, white knuckle to get through it, that's a one choice. And I'll still get through the day.
Yeah.
Or I could invite fun in, invite pleasure in, invite joy in, and say, I'm going to do this. Why don't I have a good time? And it's that sort of, I think, attitude that people who don't save things for later maybe a little more naturally do. So that's my dominant thought.
I love it. Huh. I'm like, what is my dominant thought? I mean, I guess the thing that comes to mind
Yep.
is, well, I have a couple things coming to mind.
Say whatever. Yeah, I want to know.
Okay, so like a thought that I had this morning was like, there are so many things throughout the day that it's like a roller coaster. Like you get good news and then you get bad news and then you get okay news and then something bad happens and then something great happens. Like it's just like some days feel a little bit like that. And it's like, I guess maybe it's somewhat similar to your dominant thought where it's like, I could choose to not ride that roller coaster. I can just choose to just have a good day all day. And yes, this happens and that happens and this happens and this news comes to me and that news, and it's like, I can just choose to just be on an even keel and not let all those things dictate my emotional state on an hour by hour or minute by minute basis. That was my thought this morning.
Yeah. Oh, well, and related to this, is there anything shaking you right now? Like, is there a book, a quote, something you saw on Instagram, a TV show, a movie, anything that's shaking you up right now that maybe our listeners might want to dig into a little bit?
Okay, well, what is coming to my mind is that I just ordered a book this morning that I'm really excited to get.
Yes. What?
Yeah, it's called Unworld. And do you know the divorce attorney, James Sexton? He's like very big
I am obsessed with him. One day he's got to come on our podcast, Holly.
Oh, yes, that would be amazing.
Be like, we'll join up. We'll do it together.
Yeah. Yes, we'll join forces and be like, James, please come. We do both our podcasts at the same time. It'll be
oh my God.
Laugh. Yeah,
we're this is manifesting. Look it up. Okay.
Yes. So I just saw a reel of him this morning, and somebody, I can't remember the question, but he was like, a book that brought me to tears multiple times was this book. I think it's the author's name is somebody Green. It's called Unworld. And he's like, what it's about is not what it's about. It's supposed to be like about how technology and something come together, but it's really just about being human and the human experience. And I'm like, I got to get that book. So I ordered it this morning.
Awesome. Oh, I love it. Okay, you're going to have to report back. I want to know. Yes,
I will report back next time I see you. Yes.
With James Sexton. His stuff is so good. And the gal, Lena in Houston. I don't know if you've seen any of her stuff.
No.
So good, where she was doing the one recently about, or when we're recording this is recently, about coffee dates. And like, don't take coffee dates from men. Like, that's not enough effort and planning and all this. You need to follow her. She's so good. We can post it in the notes.
Okay.
Okay. A book that, and I think the book, like when the student's ready, the teacher appears. And so the books find their way to you, right? That one found its way to you, Holly. Mine was the book Signs. I'm trying to think her last name. I think the author's last name is Jackson. I've been so connected with the number 4 lately, and this is kind of a little crazy, but whatever, here we are. So just seeing 4s everywhere, but not just like, oh, sometimes I see 1111. It's like, no, like literally screaming at me, these number 4s. And like, I've been a little bit on this journey trying to figure out like, what's that about? I believe it's communication from what I call the realm, which is like everything that's not 3D world is God and Jesus and Buddha and angels and all the good things, all the stuff out there. Okay. The university stuff. And I know the realm is like speaking to me with that. And I don't, the like, what does ChatGPT say about it? Isn't sufficient. It's not kind of scratching that itch. So I'm a little bit on a
journey to find out.
Yeah, I was going to say tear. It's like not tear, but just like curious. And so this book Signs was recommended me to by a guy named Ian Pye, and he's awesome and does a bunch of energy work and just cool stuff. And so he had suggested it to me. And it's a super light and easy read, like before bed, because I hadn't been sleeping that good recently with all my stuff going on. So
Yeah.
I added back in that habit of taking 10 or 15 minutes at bed with just the lamp on, something sort of spiritually and slow to read at night. So I was weaving that back in. So I have to see.
Amazing. What is the book about?
Signs and communication from what I call the
Oh,
realm from the universe.
oh, okay. It's literally about like getting signs.
Sorry. The book Signs is about that. So
Yeah.
it's about getting signs
Okay.
and different people's experience. It was written by this gal who's like a medium in the sense of like different quintuple blind studies and all this of like certified her as this, and she's done research and things. She's very well known. Glennon Doyle wrote like a
Oh,
blurb about it
okay.
in the front. And so I was like, okay, if it's cool with Glennon, it's cool with me. And so it's just about that. And like, I don't know that it's going to have like the depth of the answer that I'm looking for in the
Okay,
book.
that's what I was going to ask is has it revealed the meaning of the force?
No, so far I'm to the point where she's telling other people's stories where they were a little bit like, does this mean something? And
Okay.
yes, it does. And like, she's a medium. So she like communicates with people who've passed, or she calls it like crossed over or something like that, and communicated with them. And they're sort of sending signs back through her or like to their loved ones and their whatever. So they're confirming that. So nothing yet about the force. So I'm a little bit,
Okay.
yeah. If anybody knows like
Stay
what
tuned.
the depth
Yeah.
of it, I need to know. I was the same guy. Ian recommended another book, so I'll have to report back for after this. He was like, "That's kind of starter," and then there's something
Yeah.
else that sounded a little wild. So that's in my Amazon cart on the way. We'll have to
Okay,
report back to
great.
each other. Okay,
Yes.
Holly. Last question. If you could tell the women of divorce land listening only one thing, now remember we're guiding them through divorce and beyond. What would you tell them?
That's so easy. I would tell them you are made for more.
Yeah.
Yeah, don't lose your power. Like, I think sometimes in the course of getting married and having kids, like you lose yourself and you lose your power and you lose I don't want to say you lose your purpose because your purpose as a mom and a wife is a very valid purpose. But what I also believe to be true is that if God wanted our like whole life's purpose to be being a mother, he would have made kids that never grow up and they grow up. So, so you got to find something else, something in addition to that.
Yeah, I think that's such an encouragement. And what's good news, everybody, is that if you're still listening and you're here on this journey, you're at a really good place in life to find out more about what Holly's talking about and what I'm talking about. And it's not too late. I don't believe you can miss any boat made for you. I don't believe you're behind. I don't believe you've screwed it all up. When you know better, you do better. And you didn't know. And when you made the decisions you made, probably made them from an unhealed place and you got yourself into circumstances. And like you have the courage, either yourself or like in reaction to this, to create an entirely new life. And it's really scary. And then it gets a little bit easier day by day. And it's an amazing opportunity to totally reinvent your life. Like sometimes this is kind of crazy, but I'll like feel a little bad for people who don't get divorced because they don't have that like metamorphosis opportunity that divorce thrusts upon you. Now, ideally, they say you're going to get married 3 times in your life. Hopefully they're all to the same person.
Right.
Um and so it's like if you're married a long term, that's a whole different episode, Holly. If you've been married a while, hopefully y'all can grow together and you can have those metamorphoses, have a metamorphosis along the way, a big change. But for a lot of people to do so, the change involves shedding that situation that no longer serves them. So you're at a good spot, even if it feels really shitty, and even if you can't even imagine it being better. I promise you, it does get better. That old saying sticks around because it's true that time has a way of healing all wounds. It doesn't mean they go away. It doesn't mean that they erase. You may still have scars, but if you let it, the function of time can do a lot to sew up your heart and give you a foundation upon which you can build an entirely different life. So I think those of you who that calls out to you, you're definitely going to want to follow Holly's podcast. You can follow her on all the social medias. We'll post all the stuff below. Holly, thank you so much for being here. This was the most fun. I have so many more questions. I think we're going to have to do a whole nother episode just to keep
Okay, sounds good. Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you.